YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. I wanted to do a story about Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. So many of you have been asking me to cover the Epstein stuff. I've been covering it for years, and my story, what I believe this is all about, has not changed one bit since day one. And it seems to offend a lot of people out there because they want to believe that all of these stories that are getting fed to them are real. But just remember, you wouldn't know if Jeffrey Epstein ever existed unless they wanted you to know. He wouldn't have made the news. There wouldn't have been a sham trial. You wouldn't have seen an island. You wouldn't have seen the list of celebrity names on flight logs unless it was being fed to you by the government. Remember, these stories are coming to you from the same media that the majority of people have zero trust in. These are government-created psyops, and there's always a reason behind them. I'm not saying that Jeffrey Epstein isn't a pedo. I'm not saying the people on the list aren't pedophiles. They're all involved. Everybody in politics is involved. We know there's a massive blackmail campaign that they have and they run on one another. But again, if Jeffrey Epstein was doing some of the things that they claim, he was going to release information on the Clintons and release information on all these other people, he would have been Jimmy Hoffa. He would have been whacked before you ever knew who he ever even was. They continue to use Jeffrey Epstein and use the people's minds out there to dig them deeper down a government-created rabbit hole. And I want to start with this Prince Andrew story that's out there because it shows you how they operate. We know they use numerology. We know that obviously right now we're seeing this massive formulated Christian revival in America, one that is being done by the government, which is trying to lump the Republican Party with Christianity, and they're falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. And some of these stories out there, we could see the numerology. It's almost as if they're deliberately doing it. So Prince Andrew was arrested on his 66th birthday, of course, and that correlated with that white horse that was running through London that was covered in blood, and that took place 666 days to the day that Prince Andrew was arrested on his 66th birthday. And again, I covered the signs and messages that we saw in the symbolism behind the bloody horse running through London, which was not normal, which was done on purpose. They deliberately did that. They deliberately put these stories out there because they control the news, and they want you to look at the news as if all these stories that are happening are actually organically occurring and real. And it makes people gullible, and it makes people suckers for things that they want them to believe in. So the white horse, as I covered then, it is obviously very symbolic to the book of Revelation. But what people need to remember in the book of Revelation, there's multiple people who interpret it different ways. Many see the book of Revelation and the white horse as actually being the Antichrist, while others believe it to be a symbol of Christ. The verse, I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the seven seals. I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of people who study the Bible every single day who believe that the white horse is actually the counterfeit to Jesus Christ. Now, think about the stories that we're seeing. There's people out there who are believing that all this Epstein stuff is the light being shined on all the evil in the world. And they believe that Donald Trump is one of the people who's getting to the bottom of all this stuff, even though there's more pictures of Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein than anybody out there. How convenient that all of these people who believe that all this stuff with Epstein is real, that he's involved with all these people, give Donald Trump a free pass and Elon Musk a free pass. And anybody who claims to be a Republican, they just ignore it. And they say, well, that's not what that was about. Well, Donald Trump didn't know he was doing that. Oh, but Tom Hanks did, right? Oh, but Barack Obama did, right? That's how deep this psychosis has gotten. And when we think about what we're seeing with Donald Trump, obviously many who believe that he is, in fact, the Antichrist or an Antichrist, there's many Christians out there that believe he's actually a prophet chosen by God. And that this symbolism that we're seeing with a white horse and with Donald Trump and all these stories coming out about Epstein, that it's Donald Trump who's actually the one who's exposing all this stuff. So we have many deceptions going on. And there's obviously a correlation between them arresting him on his 66th birthday, Prince Andrew, from 666 days of seeing the white horse. And of course, Jeffrey Epstein supposedly died at the age of 66 years and 6 months old. So this is all being fed to us. That's what we have to remember with these news stories. Nothing that we see in the news, especially the national news, is actually real. Now, the conservatives and the people out there, I understand your need and your want to see all these pedophiles arrested, killed, whatever, right? Have a millstone thrown around their necks. I agree 100%. But remember, Epstein popped up on the scene after Pizzagate popped up on the scene. And there's clearly an agenda behind everything going on with Epstein. And I'll tell you what I believe that agenda is. You don't have to agree with it or believe it. In fact, you could believe whatever you choose. If you want to believe that all this stuff is coming out, that God's shining light on all these things, you can. But remember, these people in the media are as sick and as corrupt as anybody out there. They go through Tavistock training. The media is a creation to blur the lines of what you believe are real and what you believe are not real. And when you start believing that all these news stories are real, it blurs your lines of what reality even is. They're feeding you this information, just like they fed us all the propaganda during COVID, just like all the propaganda they fed us on 9/11 to believe that 2 planes went through 2 towers and caused them to detonate, fall. These are the stories that they've always given to us because they've always lied to us. We can go back to Waco. We could go back to propaganda on the Vietnam War. You can go through any of these stories. You can go through the Oklahoma City bombing. You can go back to the McMartin preschool, which none of these people ever investigate. You never hear them ever talk about again. So this story conveniently came up, and there's obviously the pictures out there of Prince Andrew with young girls. Of course, they always have Maxwell in the background of these photos. Nobody's wondering if these are even staged or if these are even AI-generated photos. There's just always a photo of these people with young underage girls, and Maxwell's just always creeping. She's not like, hey, since we're trafficking kids, I probably don't want to be in a photograph that you're taking of me. I probably want to step out of the screen here, right? Or these people who are even with these children, right? They'd say, hey, you know what? I don't really want to be blackmailed, right? Recently, we get these pictures of Prince Andrew laying with what appears to be a young child on the ground. So people are obviously riled up. And then think about the other stuff they've been giving us recently. Giving us images of Maxwell from prison, just like they did Epstein. Why would they do this? Does this ever happen? Do we get pictures of, other criminals in jail? Do we get Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, every day, updates on what he was doing inside his cell? Do we get serial killers before they were executed on death row like Gacy or Ted Bundy, all connected directly to the CIA? Do we ever get pictures of them or video of them walking around? So this is to convince you that they're actually in prison. That's what these are for. So they're giving us all these images of Maxwell being in jail, just like they did with Epstein. And then, of course, from there, we recently had the AI-generated image going around where Epstein was supposedly in Israel, right? Is that Epstein? Now people are wondering if he's alive. And the day that the story broke on Jeffrey Epstein supposedly being killed, I did a video. The video is available on the website. I said, is he dead or is he heading on a nice vacation to Israel? So how ironic, all these years later, which is like 6 or 7 years now, we have Jeffrey Epstein supposedly being spotted in Israel. And the reason I did that video is because these people never die. The stories they never tell us are ever true. These are characters on a world stage, and these characters serve a purpose. That's how problem, reaction, solution works. These characters exit the stage. It's political theater. Charlie Kirk exited the stage, right? And we saw from there the theatrics that came. If anybody out there believed, and I know a lot of people at first thought it was real, because they thought with their own eyes, that's how magic works, that they saw him being executed in front of them. Until, of course, they started seeing the Erica Kirk behavior, like I pointed out immediately, to watch how she behaves, watch what she posts on Instagram, posting videos of her in front of his casket. And then people started going, you know what, I don't know if this is actually real. I don't know if what we're seeing going on here is actually real. The characters exit the world stage. It does not mean that they're actually dead. And it's funny to me that when I was talking about Epstein's initial supposed suicide, I talked about how immediately he was going to be headed out to Israel. And now we're supposedly seeing images. Of course, they're only AI generated, but they're going viral of him walking around Israel. And then, of course, Prince Andrew's ex claiming that he's actually alive. Now, here's another thing that people should look at. So you can start saying to yourself, right, there's something going on here that almost makes them want to suck me into it. Right, because remember, the media is like teasing this. They're going to they're going to Congress and they're talking about this, but then they're like, oh, they're creating distractions so they don't get to the bottom of what's actually going on. They're never arresting any of these people. And if they claim to arrest someone like Prince Andrew, and Prince Andrew's going to be, taken to prison, all it means is he's going on a permanent vacation. Like I've said a million times, there's places on the map that you don't know actually exist. You see a map and you go, oh, look, it's all desert over there. Oh, okay, and here's Saudi Arabia, and there are cities and places on a map that exist that you don't know exist, that you don't fly over, that nobody's allowed near. And of course, we know that pretty much underneath all of our feet right now is an underground world that these people network in and out of, and that's where the trafficking occurs. It doesn't occur on a giant island where there's a gigantic temple sitting that's painted blue for the world to see. It happens underground. Those are things that people need to think about when they start saying, is the government working me with the Epstein stuff? Are they working me, for multiple reasons? What's going to come out of all of this? Because something always does come out of all this, and I'll break that down momentarily. But this is another thing that people should be going, yeah, that's a little suspicious. During the Super Bowl, we had Epstein survivors with a Super Bowl commercial. That's how theatrical this whole thing is. So all these survivors who were molested by Epstein, they waited all these years, and they got all brave at the same time, decided to come forward, and somehow were able to foot the bill for an $8 million to $10 million commercial to air during the Super Bowl. If you didn't see it, this played during the Super Bowl while 100 million people watched. Remember, that's by design, because when they have all the eyeballs on the TV, they're going to take advantage of it. And they wanted everybody out there to see this to bring them deeper into the Psyop.
After years of being kept apart, we're standing together.
Standing together.
Because this girl deserves the truth.
Because she deserves the truth.
Because we all deserve the truth.
So from there, of course, we had some of the survivors going to Congress. We have this stuff with Pam Bondi, and you're probably saying, okay, well, I don't get it. Why would they expose all this stuff? Why would these people lay down out in public? Why would Prince Andrew let his reputation be killed? It's the same thing with Me Too. It's the same thing with any of these other movements that the government has created. These people take an oath to their brotherhood, to their sisterhood, to their secret societies. And when they're told, this is what you're going to do, this is what happens. They don't care what the perception is in your eyes or mine. Remember, these are the people who in their books talk about us being goyim, talk about us being cattle, less than an insect. So you think that guys like Matt Lauer, when it was the Me Too movement, or Prince Andrew, or Bill Clinton, or any of these people whose names keep popping, do you think that they care at all about how you and your household perceive them? Of course they do not. It's for a greater good always. And I believe the greater good is, again, AI governance. Exactly what you're seeing being built out right now, the technocratic state, where the government will be run through full-on surveillance. America, the golden dome that they're building out, Donald Trump's dome, right? This is the surveillance states, AI governance. And in order to bring in AI governance, you have to destroy the current infrastructure, right? The voting system has to change. That's why you hear all the stories about illegals votes counting, how you could just go vote without an ID, because they want to bring in a digital ID, which is a full-on control grid system where everything you say and do on the internet will be tracked and monitored and all go into those data centers that they're building out. So you might say, well, what does the AI governance have anything to do with it? Well, here's some of the stuff that's going on that we need to pay attention to. The Epstein files rattle the age-old foundations of Britain's House of Lords, Parliament's upper chambers, in the spotlight after former UK ambassador to Washington, Peter Mandelson, was forced to resign as a member of the Lords because of his friendship with the late sex offender, right? And think about how many people's names are coming out that have to resign from their CEO positions, how many people in politics are now in the spotlight. I believe that this is deliberately being done for government reform, right? Almost everyone agrees they need to reform the government now over the old Britain's House of Lords, because some people had email conversations with Jeffrey Epstein or on a phone with him or were seen on an island with him, right? And then we get these lists with all these celebrities' names, and you start saying to yourself, oh, look, there's Barack Obama's on the list, but so is Donald Trump. Oh, you have Republicans on the list and Democrats on the list. Well, if they're going to bring down the infrastructure of the government, what better way to do it than have a massive scandal where everybody in Congress is accused of being a pedophile? Wouldn't the people get together and say, you know what? We need to do something. These people are sick. They can't be trusted. We can't trust anyone. Can't trust anyone in our party. Can't trust anyone in the opposite party. Maybe we do need to go through artificial intelligence and have an AI governance infrastructure where the government isn't, involved in doing those types of things. It's just a cleanly run government where we don't have to worry about politicians and scandals, whether it's money, whether it's sex with children, whether it's laundering. Maybe it's what we need. And think about how cold society has come. How people don't like one another anymore. People, you know what they like? They like their tech. They're more into their tech. You see more people make eye contact with their phones than they do with other people. Nobody talks to each other anymore. Nobody wants to deal with somebody who has different political ideologies anymore. And then you can start saying to yourself, wow, I could see how people would agree if all these names keep coming out and all these people in Congress keep getting accused of being pedophiles and more images come out and more stuff, that the people... And of course, the people won't demand it. The government themselves will demand it, because what they're doing right now is sabotaging. That's the word that should be used. They're sabotaging the current government structure. And look, I'm not all for the current government structure, but I'm definitely not for AI governance or a technocrat, because that's full-on enslavement. So for people out there that go, well, this system sucks, they give our money away, they do this with our taxes. Yeah, we can all agree with that. But what the people should be doing is holding these people accountable and removing them from office, not physically, not with violence, because that's what the Constitution says. But we know the Constitution doesn't exist anymore. But these people would, in a normal world, these people would be removed from office, and Congress would continue to be run the way the structure is set up by people who are actually voted in. But we don't even know who's voted in and who's not. Because remember, when the elections happen, people who don't trust the news, who say the news is fake, you get your election results from the news. You turn on CNN, you turn on Fox, whichever side of the aisle you lie on, and then they just tell you who wins, and you just believe it. There's no video, we got everything under surveillance. There's no imagery of every person casting a vote, not casting a vote. So I believe all of this stuff is to continue to build distrust in the government, whether it's the UK, you're right, that's what you're hearing, Prince Andrew, all of these people in all of these countries who sit in powerful, prominent positions, whether presidents or prime ministers, we could continue to see it getting torn down because of this, because none of these people are actually going to be held accountable. None of them. And anybody who gets arrested, all you're going to hear is that they're arrested. That's it. And that's why they're showing you Maxwell in prison, because they want to build trust in they are in jail. I heard some crazy conspiracy nut say that these people aren't even in jail. Oh, look, they showed you a picture of a woman in jail that might look like her, doesn't even look like her. But then in your mind, it starts going, oh, okay, they are in jail. Oh, okay, Epstein was in jail. Oh, okay, so-and-so. None of them go to jail, and none of them are ever brought to justice. This is a game that they're playing. And remember, just like I talked about with Epstein, a lot of this stuff revolves around COVID and the vaccines. Epstein's life, well, yes, I'm sure he's heavily involved in pedophilia, there's proof of that because of his obsession with eugenics. His obsession is eugenics. They're doing this stuff and grooming children because they're trying to breed a perfect race, a transhumanist race. So Epstein, his bizarre world of scientists, right? He donated millions of dollars and invested millions of dollars in DNA sequencing, in CRISPR and companies like that, targeting specific women with IQs and high IQs to breed with, and their children to breed. That's what all of them are involved with. Trump, Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, all these characters that you see, this is what they've been obsessed with. Eugenics, and this goes back a long, long way. Look at all the stuff that's been out there. Frankenstein Island, Jeffrey Epstein's Frankenstein-like plan to seed the human race with his DNA. And then you say, well, people go, I don't know what that means, right? They go, I don't really get it. Gene editing, okay? Gene editing technologies like CRISPR, mRNA vaccines, gene editing. And what did we just see? We saw the government, at the same time, all this stuff blew up with Epstein, right? Pizzagate came out, which, some people question the validity of that. All you have to do is look at these people's Instagram accounts, and you wouldn't be questioning anything from posts they put up in the year 2000 of children with pizza slices over their crotch. That got dropped. Nobody mentions it anymore. Everybody shifted to Epstein because the government said, hey, look, here's Epstein. Here's this guy. He's doing all this crazy stuff. And most of them don't even focus on the eugenics side of it. CRISPR, gene editing, mRNA. This is what Epstein and all these psychopaths like Gates have been obsessed with and working on for years and years and years. So what did you see? Then you saw him go to trial, and then we had COVID come out, right? His fake trial. COVID came out, then the governments around the world told you, look, you can't go back to living your life unless you go and get our mRNA vaccines, right? Pandemic outbreaks, Epstein, Gates, COVID. For anybody out there, again, if you don't understand eugenics, here's a quick clip so you can understand how sick and psychotic these people are. This is what Epstein and all of these big tech DARPA guys have been obsessed with for all these years. And all the stuff that you see on the island is occurring underground, and it's underground breeding that's occurring. These are covens. These are Satanists who are involved in trying to breed a genetically hybrid human race through transhumanism and technology along with gene editing.
They embraced a new pseudoscience born in Britain called eugenics, which falsely claimed, with no evidence, that everything from poverty to prostitution, disabilities to what they called feeble-mindedness, could be eliminated if the individuals they dismissed as socially defective could be stopped from reproducing.
I wish very much that the wrong people could be prevented entirely from breeding. And when the evil nature of these people is sufficiently flagrant, this should be done. Criminals should be sterilized, and feeble-minded persons forbidden to leave offspring behind them. Theodore Roosevelt.
The idea was that the bad people have to stop reproducing, and the good people need to reproduce more. Negative eugenics says sterilize the wrong people, snuff them out. And that's the eugenics that the Nazis would pick up on.
Colleges and universities taught eugenics. Medical societies confirmed it. Clergymen preached it. John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie funded it. And some of the most prominent people in America championed it. Margaret Sanger, Alexander Graham Bell, even Helen Keller.
It seems to me that the simplest, wisest thing to do would be to submit cases like that of the malformed idiot baby to a jury of expert physicians. If the evidence were presented openly and the decisions made public before the death of the child, there would be little danger of mistakes or abuses. We must decide between a fine humanity and a cowardly sentimentalism.
33 of the 48 states would eventually enact eugenics laws mandating the forced sterilization of wards of the state deemed physically or mentally unfit. People in prisons, hospitals, and asylums. More than 60,000 Americans would be sterilized without their consent before the last of these statutes was removed from the books in 2014.
So again, if you're out there and you're, because people get very offended with the stuff with Epstein, like I get so many comments. I talked about Epstein the day that the stuff came out, just like I exposed Pizzagate the day that Pizzagate broke, which is one of the reasons my channel blew up at the time. It's because I was talking about Pizzagate before most people were talking about it. And I wasn't focusing on emails that were released from WikiLeaks. I was focusing on a lot of the posts that you could find publicly on these guys' Instagram accounts like James Alifantis. And there was no arguing that unless you were saying, well, 10 years in advance, James Alifantis was putting these posts up because they were setting us up for Pizzagate. Well, what ended up happening? Pizzagate just got dropped and Epstein became a household name and everybody knows it. You hear him talking about it at the Grammys. You hear him talking about it, at the Golden Globes. They all crack jokes. Epstein this, Epstein that, all right? And now part of this psychosis has gotten so kind of insane. The majority of people, they feel like, the media, they're saying this about Epstein, but then now look, they're talking about, so-and-so's mom getting kidnapped or so-and-so. It's a distraction because they're not going to get to the bottom. There's no bottom to get to because none of these people are ever being held accountable. And they know that. They know the people are never ever rising up. The people are never holding any of them accountable. This is why they give you mug shots where they have, crap-eating smirks on their face, because the people are never going to do anything about it. The people are going to sit back and watch the news and hope that their political party, Donald Trump or the FBI or who's ever in charge, will do something. And it's amazing that for all those years with the Epstein stuff, the Democrats just ignored the story. But now that Trump's in power, and we actually see Trump's name and all this stuff now, the Democratic Party's covering Epstein. We want to get to the bottom. Both sides want to get to the bottom of it, right? How convenient. What a perfect way to bring down government infrastructure by taking down all trust in the government itself. All trust when it comes not just to stuff like your taxes and where your money goes, but actual trust in the people, that the people are so despicable that they're all pedophiles. It's a perfect plan, would it not be? How will we get to AI governance, which is what the plan is in NATO, the plan of the United Nations, the plan of the World Economic Forum? It is the number one thing they discuss, is global AI governance. The Tower of Babel rebuilt, it's an entire world government run through technology, a mass surveillance state. How would you get to that point unless you tore down infrastructure? How would you tear it down? Would people be on board? All these people who are patriots, who are loving, I love, even though George Washington's a Freemason, like, I love the old, Lincoln and Washington, these old, they're not Illuminati, they're not Freemason. Yeah, no, they all are. Of course, the system was built on that, built on the back of Freemasons, right? But they would say, I don't want to change the system. I love it. I love the democracy. I love all this stuff. Well, if all of a sudden we just keep hearing about this, you keep seeing more and more and more evidence that would show you that all of your beloved politicians in your political party are actually involved in trafficking children, and there's video proof and there's photo proof, well, then you'd start rethinking yourself. Maybe we can't trust any of these people in power anymore. Maybe we need some type of digital AI governance in place that doesn't see skin color, doesn't see race, isn't involved in doing stuff with kids. And we could all, live on equal rules, right? Equal playing field. These are all narratives that they discuss at the World Economic Forum, right? We hear equality and all this stuff over and over. Everybody having the same income, universal basic income, the stuff that all these guys talk about, Elon Musk, etc. It's amazing. These guys post, like Elon Musk keeps posting about Epstein over and over. But his name's supposedly on the list that they told us about, right? But then he posts about Epstein. Trump's on the list, or pictures of them together. And then and then people don't hold them accountable. They're like, well, I'm a Republican. I'm not going to hold Musk or Trump accountable because they didn't know about it. Oh, they didn't know about it. That's very convenient for you. Maybe you're just being played because the news is nothing more than a tool to manipulate you. So that's what I believe this is all about. So I believe since day one. And it's gotten so much deeper now with Epstein. In the beginning, it was just, we were still all talking about Pizzagate and Alifantis and those types of things. And then the more they just kept giving you stuff, he mysteriously died in prison. He suicided himself. People go, that doesn't sound right. Well, they're telling you this stuff. They wouldn't even have to tell you he suicided himself. Why would they have to give you an update on what he's doing in prison? Like I said, we get update on prisoners all the time. They'd have to tell you if the prisoner died. They just baited and continued to bait. And then, here's a flight log and here's another bit of information. Who's feeding you the information? The government's feeding you the information. The government is the news. I mean, this isn't coming out, Sherlock Holmes isn't getting to the bottom of the case. Matlock is not the one who is releasing the flight logs. I'm sorry to disappoint you if that's what you thought, okay? If that's what you thought was going on, you thought Matlock was out there, or Frank Drebin or somebody was out there, and they were, there's this guy, and he's involved with these people, and we have this information, and we're going to try to get it out to the people. Well, if that was actually true, and somebody like that did exist, and they were trying to get to the bottom, they'd be dead. They'd be sleeping with Luca Brasi immediately. They'd be gone. You would never even hear their name. You wouldn't get any of the info out there. It continues to get fed to you. Remember, the media, the propaganda machine gives you the stories that they want you to believe are real for reasons. There's always a reason behind it. Sometimes there's distractions. Obviously, we see all the stuff with the trans shootings that keep going on and the red flag laws. People just fall, there's just every week a trans person shooting his own family or shooting somebody else. And nobody goes, it's a little bit weird. They leave manifestos. They write stuff on the ammo. It's always the same storyline, the same plot points. They have a fake name. There's always 33 involved, always something Masonic involved. And they don't go, what are they trying to do here? What are they trying to get me to feel? Why are they trying to make me feel that way? Oh, okay, right. Then they start talking about red flag laws and how trans people shouldn't be allowed to buy guns. And then you go, I agree, because trans people have mental health problems. But then you don't realize you're the one who's going to be labeled as having the mental health problem in the future. So that's the stuff with Epstein, with Prince Andrew's 66th birthday, 666 days from the white horse. Just remember the symbolism, too, with the white horse. Obviously, in the book of Revelation, some interpret the white horse as the Antichrist, while others interpret the white horse as Christ himself. Now, I'm not getting into a debate about those types of things. That's not what this channel is actually about. But think about how they're using these types of things to, in a sense, convince people that Donald Trump is a prophet, that we're living in this certain time or that certain time, that things are being revealed to us, or they could be playing you. They could be playing you because we clearly see that they're playing Christians right now, right? So that's how I'm looking at all these stories. And as are there signs? Of course, God gives signs, but we see how badly Christians are being played and how easily manipulated they're. Like, they actually believe that there was assassination attempts on Donald Trump's life. I mean, maybe the worst Psyop that we've ever seen, the shot in the ear with the shooter who looked like he couldn't even ride a bicycle, some retarded looking kid, right, who happened to be connected to BlackRock, somehow outsmarted the Secret Service, got a shot off, missed by a milli-inch, right? Trump makes sure he pumps his fist and yells, fight, fight, fight. All the cameramen, like I've covered, which all the videos are on the website, they ran around the stage to photograph it perfectly so that we could have statues and T-shirts. That's how you build a psychosis. And these people actually think that that event is real. So we could see, after that, right, all the Republicans talking about God, divine intervention. I showed you videos on that in the past. Hundreds of times, these people coming out going, divine intervention. I think it's divine intervention. It's divine intervention. So now all the Christians repeat and they go to church. And instead of talking about the Bible at church, they're talking about Trump and divine intervention, right? And everybody's getting all pumped up. And they're like, yeah, all right, Christian revival's going on. Yeah, it's a man-made, manipulated Christian revival. And there's obviously going to be, there's not light at the end of the MAGA Christian white nationalist revival. If anything, it's a cliff at the end of that people are going to walk right off of and be very easily deceived because they're being deceived. So keep an eye on on all that type of stuff, and keep that in mind when you see some of these stories. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.